Now, Namibia has introduced new visa regulations requiring U.S. citizens, along with nationals from over 30 countries, including the UK, Germany, and Canada, to obtain visas before entering the country, ending long-standing visa-free access. Now, President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah emphasized the need for equal treatment, asserting that African nations should no longer offer open access to citizens of countries that do not reciprocate. Now, as more African countries consider similar policies, one wonders, are we witnessing a rebalancing of global travel norms shaped by a new era of diplomatic reciprocity? Today, joining me to speak on this is Dr. Gurvy Kavei. He's a lecturer at University of Namibia. Thank you so much for reaching us at this time, sir.
Thank you for having me, indeed, Tashan. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Now, Dr. Kavei, Namibia cites a lack of reciprocity as the reason for revoking visa access to these over 30 or 31 countries, including the US and the UK. I know a lot of people seem to think that it is only UK citizens' visas that were revoked, but 30 countries. Is this a principled stand for fairness, or could it be perceived as a retaliatory move that might strain diplomatic relations?
Thank you very much for that question. And maybe before I just simplistically answer your question, I want to sketch a very small background to why Namibia has arrived where it is in terms of that diplomatic policy they have taken, or we have taken as a country. I think this is happening against the background that, first of all, Namibia is a non-aligned country, and being non-aligned, it means you really have to have balanced relationships diplomatically with all countries on equitable basis. It's also entering a new frontier of what we call economic diplomacy, which will mean that we need to begin to emphasize South-to-South cooperation with, the global South countries, vis-a-vis to the traditional sort of North-South sort of dynamics. We also have a visa reciprocity, which we are looking at, necessitated by perhaps some would say that we are now having the free Africa trade regime that came in since 2019, and that in itself is actually requires that we strengthen and become more assertive economically, diplomatically, with not only African countries, but the rest of the world, trading partners and those that with which we have relationships. And remember also, we have a lot of transition in terms of green energy transition, where Namibia is taking the lead in terms of green hydrogen projects, where we are beginning to see a lot of foreign direct investment interest really sopping up in Namibia, and many countries are coming with that economic investment interest. And we need to take advantage of these as a country to begin to assert our stand as far as our relationship are concerned, especially for people coming outside the countries, coming into Namibia with those economic interests. So we've got to count on that as our sort of natural resource capital.
All right, now speaking of those that you talked about, the people coming into Namibia, the countries that have been flagged, were there any prior diplomatic efforts or negotiations with the affected countries to address the visa disparity before implementing this policy?
Oh, yes, indeed. Look, this thing didn't just happen yesterday when Her Excellency Netumbo came to power this year. This thing took place almost 2 years ago. It was a cabinet decision, a National Assembly decision, and it was gazetted almost a year and a half ago before President Netumbo came into power. The diplomatic relationships that are there in place already were served notice to the effect that we are coming up with this kind of policy. And obviously, a grace period was issued, which was more than a year, to those countries to perhaps begin to look into the new developments with the view and expectation that they would perhaps reconsider their sort of visual relationship with Namibia. But some of which have indicated, yes, we will come to the party at the right time. Others, obviously, are just mute on that. And so it's not like we have thrown a gauntlet without letting them know and without even giving them a gracing period to rethink it otherwise. And so it has been coming along for some time.
All right, Dr. Kavei. Now, could this policy set a precedent for, other African countries seeking more equitable visa arrangements with other Western countries?
Yes and no, but if you look at it from a bigger picture point of view, it's a sort of a microcosm of what is really happening in the rest of Africa continentally, where majority of countries are beginning to become very assertive, not only in terms of visa arrangement and relationships between countries, but also with respect to the way we are trading globally commodities. The recent call for action in most of the cycles of diplomatic works in Africa is that of value addition to our natural resources. And with that, it would mean we would have to arrest our youngsters that are crossing seas looking for jobs overseas by creating local value and job creation, especially for young people in the country. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it will become a chorus action for majority of African countries actually perhaps to move in the same direction, because the moment we do that, again, you are setting a precedence for industrialization. You are setting a precedence for those countries having to come in here, set up manufacturing opportunities in Africa, and therefore it would call for those that are really having keen interest on Africa to also consider looking for visas, and even if it affected them negatively, it would really sort of ask them to rethink their position in a way. And I think it is time that African countries on a collective basis begin to move along the same sort of choir and become more assertive at bargaining negotiations with these other countries. I think the days of Western privilege are really getting numbered, and therefore we have to celebrate what the President of Namibia has done.
All right, Dr. Kavei, you talked about countries coming into, Africa to set up manufacturing hubs and all that. But before we go into that, before we go to the trade aspect, do you think that these visa changes would affect Namibia's diplomatic relations with the affected countries, particularly those that are major trade partners or even donors?
The reason I have really sketched that economic perspective is to point to the fact that, look, if there are stakes of interest economically for those countries, it would really put them in a position to think differently and take a second thought about it. Instead of being confrontational diplomatically with Namibia or perhaps any other country that takes a similar decision, if economic stakes are, interests are at stake, they would probably have to come to the table and negotiate and rethink and have a different working relationship of equality. And in fact, that is what I'm expecting. The worst they could do is to try and become antagonistic to Namibia in reaction to visa requirement, which I think that would be a very unfortunate and regrettable position any country will take, because for a longer time, we have been the one that are on the receiving end most of the time, where we are the only one, asking for visas to go to their countries, but we have really given them a free grazing opportunity for most of the past, for them coming to Namibia and other African countries. So I don't anticipate a confrontational reaction from those countries. Rather, what I foresee is an amicable approach of this country really looking at what Namibia can offer, getting to the table and negotiating some amicable outcomes.
All right, rightfully said, no bad blood. But what about when it comes to tourism? Because some concerns were actually raised by industry experts. And we know that tourism is a significant contributor to Namibia's economy. How will this policy affect tourist inflow and revenue?
Surprisingly, I thought at the beginning when such a... You see, the good thing that happened is that this has not just come out of the blue. As I've said earlier, it's been something that we have been expecting in the pipeline for almost a year to 2 years now. And the industry, the tourism industry and the operators in that industry have really adjusted their game plan and repositioned and probably also looked at alternative promotional tools they could use as mitigation against the eventuality of what this policy would mean to their businesses. And be that as it may, what you have realized is that in the past 2 months, since the introduction of this policy, month and a half almost, the revenue that we have raised just out of visa and entry visas, it's 24.3 million Namibian dollars. I don't know how much that is in US dollars, but you can translate or convert that. Which is coming out of about 16,000 arrivals alone. And that number itself is almost 2% extra or above the same period of arrivals last year. And so that really goes to tell you that even though one would anticipate in a long term a negative effect on the tourism industry, possibilities or early indications are telling us the contrary, that I think we would make a little bit of additional revenue to the GDP. And in that sense, I think it's probably a payoff sort of policy decision that we have taken. All
right. Now, Dr. Kavei, let's move to, the costs right now. The new visa fee is set at 1,600 Namibian dollars, which is approximately $90 US. Now, how does this compare to the visa fees that Namibians face or pay when traveling to these other 31 countries?
It's quite a drop in an ocean, actually. It's minuscule, and some people were even saying that's really tokenistic. There's almost no charge, really, when you look at even the currency parity of the Namibian dollar, which to the US dollar today, it's about 1 to 18 Namibian dollars. And so really speaking, or to the pound, it's about 1 to 23 to the pound. So the fiscal effect on those that have really now to pay visa, for me, it's quite minuscule, to be honest. And I don't think it's something really that should be a big or major cause for concern as such.
Okay. Now, let's go to infrastructure now. Is Namibia's current infrastructure equipped to handle, the anticipated increase in visa applications, both online and on arrival? I want to know if there's a readiness in ensuring that major entry points like the Hosea Kutako International Airport are prepared for the new visa on arrival procedures.
For the major ports of arrival, one of the things that the country has really been doing, and this is why it took us a little bit of a time, 24 months almost, to prepare the execution of this policy provision, is to make sure that we put our house in order and look at the requisite infrastructure to handle the visa. But also, we have had long-tested, more than 5-year pilot programs Remember, this thing of visa on arrival, it's part of the Africa 2063 agenda, where most of the African arrivals to Namibia have been for a long time actually subjected to online visa application, on port arrival visa application, and those kind of stuff. So this is something that we have really been preparing. There would, of course, be some few challenges, but which with time we would catch up on the small ports of arrival, but through which we don't really receive quite a significant number. But plans are in place already to ensure that those other smaller ports of arrival, airports and entry points in the country are beefed up to the challenge of the occasion.
All right. Now, Dr. Kavei, you talked about a 5-year pilot and, this being in the pipeline for a while. But there's this Ibn de Klerk from Economic Policy Research Association that actually mentioned that it was pushed on them overnight, right? And if stakeholders like these can actually complain, it begs the question, how is the government ensuring that potential travelers are adequately informed about the new requirements to prevent confusion and also entry denials?
I wouldn't deny those concerns at all. In fact, for every action or new intervention, whether it's policy or otherwise, that takes place in any socio-political system, it's bound, first of all, to encounter resistance, but also at the same time, there will be some genuine concerns of stakeholders like businesses to say maybe they were not prepared, or probably they might have been looking at this from an underestimation point of view that it probably may not come. It's just a political whims that people are talking about, but here it is. And if, unfortunately, we are probably having some people that are caught red-handed napping and probably not prepared. It's very unfortunate, but I'm sure government will put in place all facilities and interventions and support systems to ensure that those that are negatively affected are, supported and given the necessary help they need in order to cope up with the new requirements.
All right. Now, I would also like to know how the Namibian public, has actually reacted to this policy change. Is there a sense of national pride in a certain reciprocity, or is there mostly concern over potential economic repercussions?
It's a mixed thing, to be honest. We have, from a diaspora point of view, we have quite a number of nationals that have taken citizenship in other countries like those 30 that are affected by this policy. And what you would then see or expect is that as they want to return or come and visit Namibia, they definitely would have to, consider buying visas, which in any case become a little bit easier because they have that sort of natural Namibian duality of citizenship, which is not an official policy, but if they had renounced and gone to those countries, I think they would have those sort of concerns. At the same time, from a political point of view, there are those of us that would look at this from a patriotic point of view and say, well, here we are. I think we are now having an assertive African leadership that is, really looking at the balance of relationship on an equitable basis. And it is only planting that seed of assertiveness through this kind of actions where the external world, especially the Western world, will begin to respect who you are. And when you enter into other avenues of constructive engagement, those relationships of constructive and mutual engagement become truly mutualistic and a win-win sort of relationship. You are currently also having those that have been within Namibia caught napping, obviously, those probably that have arrived during the time before this law was introduced. And currently, the government is actually beginning now a roundup exercise looking at who is from those countries that is in the country currently without a visa. And they are given an option. Please come and try and get a visa because you arrived at a time when this requirement was not in place. Now you can come to the official, help points and get your visa. Okay. Those that are probably overstaying, they will have to be deported if need be, but which I think should be the last resort in any case. Oh. So that is the sort of scenario that you are having in place already.
All right. So being that, this has actually been in the works for a while, is there like a timeline or even a criteria set for reviewing the effectiveness, and also the impact of this policy?
It's too early to say, to be honest. I mean, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And I wouldn't speak for government to say when they want to have a policy review. Usually, it's common practice that you come back and revisit a policy impact review exercise mainly after 5 years. And for now, really, it's a wait and see kind of scenario and learn from it what are the pros and cons of such actions. And we learn as we go and we adapt as we go.
All right. Now, will these changes also affect the Namibian diaspora or individuals with dual citizenships in the affected countries?
But as I said already, I do really think so. Although officially Namibia does not have, an official recognition or practice or policy stand of dual citizenship, we know for sure we have Namibians in the diaspora, and if they don't have their Namibian passports wherever they are, coming back to Namibia will become a teething challenge for them because they, as I said, they will have to get a visa. And also we have these Namibians out there who have children and other relatives who might want to come to Namibia. Again, they will have to be subjected to having to obtain the visa. Everybody will be affected. It's inevitable. And so that's the nature of our policy.
Dr. Kavei, we're about wrapping up and we'd love to have your final take. But even at that, do you think that Namibia is open to negotiating bilateral visa agreements with individual countries to restore visa-free travel based on mutual reciprocity? So are they open to, when some of these countries come to say, no problem, we're giving visa-free for Namibians, will they be willing to reciprocate in this case?
You mean the other countries that have...
Yes, will Namibia be open to reciprocating once, it becomes mutual?
Oh, yes, no, absolutely. In fact, that is the stand of the Namibian government already. I mean, can't talk for them, but that which I know is that we have an open door policy so far. And for whatever country is interested in coming to the table, as I've said, to renegotiate the visa arrangement between Namibia and then they are more than open, coming to open hands. They can enter into a new deal. If you look at the U.S. as a country with President Donald Trump, I'm sure, and I anticipate that one of the things he is likely to do is to come to Namibia and say, can we have a deal? Maybe in terms of your rare earth minerals, I would also, if you sign a deal with me, I will make sure that the Namibians will also not require a visa to come to the U.S. But that's up to him if he wants to do that. But the other possibility is also is that the reciprocity arrangement of this visa is likely to improve the African relationship with many Western countries. And Namibia, I think, should be joined by many other African countries to take the same decision. When we work in unison on this kind of grand scale policies, that's, I think, when the outside world will look at us as a continent, but not as an individual country that can be easily manipulated. And so my call is that this thing should be replicated across majority of African countries if we are to really stand our position in the global affairs.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gurvy Kavei from Namibia. Thank you so much. We appreciate you for your time. Lecturer, University of Namibia. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Darshan, and nice for having me indeed.
It's a pleasure.